White lives don't matter. Black lives don't matter. These are often not the views of many people, but I'm here today to wonder about those views and the opposite of them, that black lives matter and white lives matter. In fact, all lives matter. And the integration of both the hashtag Black Lives Matter and hashtag All Lives Matter. Because I'm looking at what happened from 2020. The 25th of May 2020 was a huge date in which a man called George Floyd, who just happened to be black, went into a shop and purchased some cigarettes with a $20 bill. The cashier, of course, came out and he thought, hey, this guy has used a counterfeit $20 bill, so I'm going to call the cops, I'm going to call the police. And he did. He called the police, and the police came and they went towards George Floyd, who was a man in his mid-40s, and he just happened to be black. The police, after the police came, 17 minutes after the police came and spoke to George Floyd, he was suffering with brain damage so much that he was on the brink of death. In fact, he died soon after. This was a horrible event in the history of black people, in the history of white people, in the history of all people, in the history of democracy, in the history of the United States of America, and further afield as well. But the study I'm looking at is going to be about Black Lives Matter, but also about All Lives Matter and the difference and why we should maybe support one over the other. But believe it or not, the first time I actually met a black man, I kid you not, was when I was actually 20 years of age. It's the first time I ever spoke and had a conversation, a full-blown conversation with a black man. Or actually a black woman also. The first time, imagine I was 20 years of age, and it actually happened in the United States. So my experience is not unlike perhaps what many black and white people have had in the United States. More about that a little bit later on. So back in 2012, 2013, an incident happened where a 17-year-old black person, a man, a young man that is, by the name of Therein was murdered. And he was murdered by a guy called George Zimmerman. So George Zimmerman actually was acquitted of the murder, and this infuriated many black people. This meant that three very brave people, females, black females, decided to start the BLM, or the Black Lives Matter movement. And with this, it snowballed. It gathered pace and momentum. And a couple of years later then, in 2014, at the end of 2014, a further two men were murdered in not a very justice-filled way, shall we say. And they were Eric Garner and Michael Brown. And this erupted a big discourse online. And in this particular study, it was Twitter that was the conduit, the carrier of all this discourse. And at the time, Twitter was just, it was rolling along, doing its own thing at 140 characters in each tweet. So it wasn't giving a huge say for people that wanted to be saying something very powerful, be it positively or negatively at all. So with that in mind, it was very challenging for people to really communicate, be it their anger or their disdain or whatever it was, their extreme feelings towards, for or against the black movement. And it was on the 3rd to the 7th of December 2014 that this particular study really concentrated on a lot of tweets. In fact, in the first hour where people found out that there was not going to be much done at all with regard to this murder of these black men, 13,000 tweets filled up Twitter in that first hour alone with regard to hashtags of Black Lives Matter and hashtag All Lives Matter. So the whole discourse of which is more important, black or all? Are we all more important than each other, or are black people more important? This whole frenzy happened online, and it was from here that the study started looking at things. So they took a particular segment of that. They took 500 of people that they essentially started really looking at these users and really looking at their particular behavior, with regard to this particular issue, the Black Lives Movement, and the whole killing of these two people. And out of the 500, of this particular amount of people, they took 100 and they hemmed in and honed in on these particular people and started looking at exactly what they were saying. And how they categorized it was, well, the first way was call to action. Their call to action was hashtag Black Lives Matter, hashtag All Lives Matter, that kind of thing. And this motivated the discourse in the first place. The second category that the researchers put people in, the users in, that were tweeting all about this, was a struggle over science. And this is where they figured out that, believe it or not, over half of those that were against the Black Lives Matter movement were young white females. Now you would think that there would have been a lot more males, or a lot more aggressive behaviour would come from males, or white supremacists that just happen to be male and have testosterone just boiling through their brains. But no, it was actually young white females. Now the Black Lives Matter movement had, after that, gathered pace and momentum, and a lot of young people were supporting it, which is a good thing, educating them about the black power and the need for being respected. And the third area was that the researchers put things in was that there was a failure to indict the officer who murdered Eric Garner. And this was essentially how there was a shift in the signs that were going on online. And there was a rapid discourse that was happening between people, be it pro-Black Lives Matters movement or white supremacists and so on. So there was a rapid amount of tweets and information going over and back online. So it really jumped things up and made social media just go off the map with regard to this particular thing. And if we fast forward again to 2020, 5-6 years later, we can see how George Floyd's murder in May, 25th of May, that is, 2020, really promoted a lot of hate, but also a lot of support for blacks on the ground and also in the communities. Me, in Europe, I was seeing things that were occurring that I really didn't think I would see. I saw a world pandemic, as we all did in the world, where the COVID-19 virus was already occurring, and we were in lockdown. And yet, even though we were still in official lockdown or coming out of lockdown, in my country, in my city, what I noticed that there was an official outrage there with people that were supporting Black Lives Matter. And these people decided to have a gathering, an official gathering, and they proposed the gathering, and the local authorities decided to ask them very kindly not to have the gathering. Not because they didn't support the Black Lives Matter movement, rather because they thought with the coronavirus or COVID-19 occurring, that it wasn't wise. They wanted gatherings to actually stay apart, for people to stay at home or stay local, but to stay a couple of meters apart. And if there was a gathering, of course, it would push people together, and it would be worse for the virus itself, and it would cause a lot of perhaps disquiet, especially with the panic that was going on already with the virus. But yet there was a gathering, and as small and all as it was in comparison to most other cities, there was still up to a couple of hundred people that gathered, and in many cases they were very close together. Not all, that is to say, but in many cases they were closer than the permitted or even safe way of social distancing at the time. So this was replicated all around the world, in not just in the United States, but in Europe as well, because at this stage there was blacks and whites integrating in society. But back when I was 20 years of age, even though I went over to the United States, I just had my very first interaction with a black person. I was walking down the street and it was a really nice day. I was hot and I was free. I was myself. I was single. I had a few dollars, as I say, in my pocket, but not necessarily in my pocket this day, because all I had was my shorts on, and I just had a t-shirt on because it was so hot. I was not used to the heat. There was sweat, the perspiration was just rolling down my back. That rarely, if ever, happened. So I travelled very light. I didn't even wear socks. I just wasn't able for it. So as I walked, I wandered. That's all. I just chilled out, as I say. I relaxed. And there I met a black man who was, it seemed, looking for money on the side of the road. And he asked me, looked at me dead on, eye to eye, and just asked me man to man. And he was a young man too. He asked me for some money, and he was very mannerly. And I said, sorry, I don't actually have any money. To be honest, I was shocked. Not so much that he was a black man, but the fact that he was begging. I had never noticed this before. I'd never seen this before coming from my own country. And so I was actually very ignorant to it. And I was just learning. So around the corner, as a student on my own in a new country, I was seeing things and learning things that I'd never seen before. It was exciting. It was adventurous. So on I walked after being mannerly with this man who had been mannerly with me. He just so happened to be black. And I thought, hey, I'm really worldly. I've kind of spoken to a guy who is black and also a guy who so happens to be looking for money. And I've been nice to him, he's been nice to me, and I feel good about myself, even though I would prefer to give him money. But so be it, I had no money with me. I walked on. I walked, as they say, one block. I was now beginning to understand the difference between what a block was and what a mile was. I was learning the lingo of the locality in America. Blocks were never in my lingo at home, so I was learning. I was figuring out how far to go. And as I moved on one block, I went around the corner and travelled another block or so. And then there he is, the guy, same guy, right in front of me. But this time he's coming from the front of me, not from behind. I couldn't figure it out. Why or how is this guy here? And again, eye to eye, very good contact. And he started speaking to me and he just said, hey guy, what are you doing? Now at this stage, for me, I was boiling, I was hot. It was really, really hot. I was walking, it was just about getting one foot in front of the other. I was not at all acclimatized to the heat. I was not used to it. So I had my shorts. I was like white, more or less, on my chest because I whipped off my t-shirt. And he just really was very nice. And he very mannerly said, people don't wear t-shirts over their shoulders like that. It's just not the done thing. We kind of leave our shirts on. I saw you go into a store right after I was talking to you on the street. And it's true, I did go into a store with my shirt off. But I was just so hot and I didn't realise the etiquette as such. And he said, look guy, it's not the done thing. Just being nice to you. And he was really nice. And we got chatting. He said, where are you from? And it was cool. And he was like, whoa, cool country and stuff. So it's just a normal, easygoing man-to-man chat. That was the first and second time I'd spoken to a man who was black. And in the years after that, I had absolutely no problem. I spoke to many men and women that were black. And then in my country, a lot of men and women came and lived that were black. And to me, they were all welcome. I worked with people that were black. I worked for people that had black children. I worked with parents. For me, I never have actually had any problem with anybody who happens to have black skin. I don't see the issue as being an issue. I just see it as being the potential for being positive with each other. And yeah, there's good people and there's bad people, but that necessarily doesn't mean that you're black and you're white if you're good and you're bad, or vice versa. It doesn't come to bear like that. Anyway, I decided to do an experiment. And my experiment involved Twitter. So I put it out there. I tweeted all about how we should enjoy the fact that, well, it don't matter if you're black or white. And with that, I did hashtag Black Lives Matter and hashtag All Lives Matter, just to see if I would get a reaction, considering this study was all about Twitter. And 11 hours later, I didn't get any extreme reaction, whether it's negative or positive. And in fact, I got a good reaction, which was nice to see. So Twitter perhaps has moved on in 2020 from 2012 and 14 with all these horrible murders of black people. Maybe we can move on as well, and the people around us can move on and be more proactive and hope that where there's black, there's also white. Where there's white, there's also black. We're together and we need to be positive for all of humanity. Surely that's the answer to it all. So thanks for watching. Until next time, be well. Treat people well. You never know what's around the corner when you walk a couple of blocks. So until next time, please subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.